guys, welcome back to Ashar Books. So today I'm going to be doing my May wrap up. It is already June, so it's time to wrap up all the books I read in May. May was like a pretty good reading month. It wasn't great as far as like the number of books. I think I read 8 books in May. So, I mean, it's pretty average for me. Usually I average about like 2 a week. I'm first going to talk about a book that I didn't rate, and then I'll talk about my reads from my least favorite of the month to my favorite of the month. I will say it was a pretty good month as far as ratings go. I didn't have a lot of like low books. Like I had no 3 stars. Everything was either a 4 or 5 stars. So, I mean, ratings wise, I actually had a really good reading month. So the first book I wanted to talk about was an anthology, which was called Monsters in Love. And I had a very specific reason for picking this up, and that's because I've never really read any like monster romance, but I'm not against it. I didn't really know what to start with, and there's like so much out there. So I thought maybe I would start with an anthology, and that way I could try out a few different authors and things and see like what worked for me, what didn't. And that was kind of successful with this. I'm not gonna rate it because I find anthology is kind of hard to rate. And also I did skip, I think 1, maybe 2 that just weren't working for me. So I don't even know if I put it on Goodreads because I didn't read the whole thing, but I wanted to mention it on here. So this kind of showed me 2 things. There honestly seems to be kind of 2 different like types of monster romance from what I'm seeing. One that's just pretty darn heavy on the steam and kind of that's it. And then 2, there's like a really beautiful story and then the steam kind of goes along with it. And that definitely is where I kind of found myself, I think, enjoying it a little bit more. Some of these were just super short, like very, very short to the point. And like, I think I got the idea that I could like this, but I also think that these were just a little bit too short to actually get any kind of like character development for a lot of them. It was an enjoyable time, and it did show me that I need to like pick one and actually read like a full-length book, because I do think I'd like that a little bit better. If you have one that you think I should start with that's like just a really great story, let me know. I have a few in mind, but I'd love to know your opinion as well. So now my 4-star read. So the first one is A Hunger Like No Other by Kresley Cole. This is the first book in the Immortals After Dark series, and I've actually read this one before. I don't think it was on Goodreads because I actually think I read it before I actually used Goodreads. I read it like years ago, but it was on my Kindle, so it was when I had my Kindle. But anyways, this is the first book in Immortals After Dark. I became a little bit obsessed with the Fated Mates podcast this month, which I know, how have I not listened to it before? But that's the podcast by Sarah McLean and Jen Prokop. Sarah McLean, the author, and Jen, I think is like a book editor / teacher, and just obviously reads romance a lot. But their first season was going through the Immortals After Dark series. So it kind of inspired me to want to actually read that series because I love paranormal romance and I've never read it. And it seems kind of like if you're a paranormal romance fan, that's like a crime. And everybody loves the series. So I will say I really liked this book. I mean, it had some things that I could say maybe were slightly dated. It is an older book, and that's why it got 4 stars instead of 5. Sometimes, like, I like an alpha male, but sometimes our hero was a little bit too far for me. However, I do really want to continue the series because it was such a cool world and I like the idea of it. I actually really liked Kresley Cole's writing. So I have on my goal for the summer to continue with that series and pick up book, hopefully like 2 and 3. So the next one I read was also a continuation of a series, and that was Mine to Possess by Nalini Singh. This was book, I think, 4 in the Side Changeling series. I might have gotten the number wrong, but it's like 4 or 5, somewhere in there. And I'm really liking this. This is another paranormal romance series where you have the Psy, which is like a race of kind of like super intelligent beings, kind of like humans, but like amplified by a lot. And then you have the changelings. Then you have the changelings, which are like shifters basically, and they have all kinds of shifters. Mostly some kind of a cat shifter is the main kind, but there's a lot of different ones. And I really like this one. I gave this one 4 stars as well. I will say these are just like a good read. Like if you just want something where you know you're gonna have a beautiful love story, you're gonna have some kind of an alpha male again. Most of these are, because I mean, they're shifters. I feel like that kind of comes with the territory. I feel like this one, like I've read 4 now from her, and like none of them have been below a 4-star. Like it's just a solid read. I will say I think it was book 2 or 3. I definitely gave a couple of them 5 stars. This one didn't quite reach that for me. This one was also a little bit of a second chance because the 2 characters knew each other as kids, and then they both were kind of ripped apart and went through a lot and then kind of had to come back together. So you know, a little bit of kind of a couple different tropes thrown in there, but overall really fun. And again, like I'm really trying to keep going with this series because I want to get to some of the later books that I know are people's absolute favorites. So fingers crossed I can do that this summer. The next 4-star read I have is Crush by Tracy Wolff. This is book 2 in the Catmere Academy series, which is like a paranormal romance YA series. I'm really enjoying this series. It's been a while since I've read like more of a YA paranormal romance. And I think this one's, it's very fun. You know what I mean? These are chunky books though, very chunky. And I will say my critique for the whole series so far, I have read the 3rd one, I'll talk about that in a second, but my one critique really is that they are just a bit long. Like I do think they're kind of dragged out. It's a long series. I think there's 6 or 7 books in the series, but this one was really cool, and I will say this one was very, like a lot more happened in this book than in the first book. I think this was a much stronger book than the first one, and then you'll see book 3 I think was even stronger. So I definitely like the idea that the author is getting better and more like world building, and the characters are getting more. It's about Grace. If you don't know, the series is about Grace, who is brought to this academy in Alaska in the first book, and it's basically full of different supernatural creatures, and Grace is trying to figure out her place. She starts off thinking she's human, but do we think she stays that way? No. So in this book, Grace really figures out who she is and is going through a lot as far as just her development as a character. You also have the love story, which I will tell you, I'm gonna find it really hard, and I said this in my vlog that I put up. It's really hard to talk about this series without giving any kind of spoiler away. I will just say, if you don't want any spoilers for this series, just maybe fast forward through this and the 3rd one when I talk about it, because I kind of have to mention a few things, otherwise I just can't say anything. So go ahead and fast forward, I'll give you a second. Okay, so what I wanted to say was, in this book you meet Hudson, who is Jackson's brother from the first book. So Jackson and Grace were together in the first book, and then this one you meet Hudson, and he's kind of like known as like the big bad, right? He was the evil brother who Jackson killed, and now he's back from the dead. And when it starts off in this book, he's inside Grace's head. So the two of them are really kind of become very close in this book. This one doesn't have so much of a romance between her and Hudson, but like you see where it's going. I definitely feel like this is, especially after reading the 3rd book, spoiler again, please don't listen if you don't want to be spoiled, but I definitely think this is going to be like a switcheroo. I definitely think Hudson and Grace are the two that are going to be like destined to be together, which I wasn't super mad about. I mean, I will say sometimes the whole like gotcha like flip that I feel like it does happen a lot in paranormal or fantasies romances sometimes can be a little bit annoying when you get so attached to a character in the first book, and then that's like not the one that our love interest ends up with. And it really worked for me, and I think you still get a lot of the other character. You get a lot of Jackson. I really love the friends in this. It has a really big like team feel to it. Like these are all just really good friends, and they're there for each other. And there's a lot of this I liked a lot. If you just want to get lost in a world, I definitely recommend this series. And then I'll go ahead and go and start talking about my 5-star reads. The first one I wanted to talk about is Coven. Might as well just go into that one. This is book 3 in the Catmere Academy series, and I'm listening to all of these on audiobook, by the way. They are on AnyPlay if you have that subscription, and I'm really, really liking the audiobook. So definitely recommend that if you're kind of like afraid of how long they are. So this one had so much happen. I mean, good gravy. Like from where this book started to where it ended was like worlds apart. And I really liked it. This is the first 5-star I've given of the series, but I really liked this one. Grace has so much character development. The romance between Grace and spoiler again, please don't listen if you don't want to know. But the romance between Grace and Hudson really amplifies in this one. Like, so much happens. It really does have a pretty good equal footing on like the plot moving along, where in the romance moving along at the same pace. I really like this. They go on some trips in this one. There's some very sad moments in this one as well, where I actually found myself tearing up. And overall, like, again, this is just a really fun series. It has a lot of heart to it. I like the kind of like, almost like the Buffy gang feel of it, like the Scooby gang. I feel like the friends in this are kind of all going through this, and it definitely ends on another kind of cliffhanger. So I'm definitely eager to start book 4. But this one kind of definitely threw a lot on its head, and you kind of had a lot of like what moments, so I really liked it a lot. The next one I'll talk about is Terms and Conditions by Lauren Asher. I did give this one 5 stars as well. This is book 2 in the Dreamland Billionaire series, and I really like this series. I will say I talked about this one quite a bit in a vlog that I put up before, so if you want to know more thoughts, definitely let's look at that. But I will say it was a bit of a slow start for me, which tends to be happening a lot recently, where it takes me a minute to kind of get like to know the characters and really like fall in love with them. But once I do, I'm like all in. So this one follows Declan and Iris, and this one is a marriage of convenience storyline, where Declan is basically this big businessman, and he's trying to become the like CEO, and one of his grandfather's wishes is for him to, I don't know if he had to get married, but he had to do, I'm getting kind of blurry on like the rules of what he had to do, but like he had to do something that involved basically showing how he was a steady kind of guy, you know? And so marriage of convenience. I love that. It's one of my absolute favorite tropes. Iris was his assistant, and she is just such a good character. Iris is kick-ass, and she kind of volunteers herself for this marriage because his first one falls through, and she is Declan's friend. I mean, he kind of doesn't treat her the best, but like they're friends, and he needs her a lot more than he's willing to kind of admit. And seeing her kind of peel back his layers slowly but surely was just so good to watch. I will say Iris too. I mean, Iris definitely had some things to work through as well. You know, she hasn't had the most luck in love, and she was kind of definitely shaped by what happened with her parents' marriage, and I really liked this. It took a while for Declan to kind of warm up, just like it took a while to warm up with Iris, but by the end I was just a puddle of goo. I mean, this man, he speaks multiple languages, and he would like tell Iris he loved her in like different languages that she doesn't speak, so like she didn't necessarily know that, but they also had really cute banter back and forth. These are two people I really believed were friends, and then they really were just like soulmates. Like these two were meant for each other, and I really do believe that. And it was super sweet to watch. By the end, it took me a minute because he really messes up at one point, and I was like, I don't know if he's gonna redeem himself, but he did manage to kind of earn her trust back, and I'm loving this series, so I'm definitely excited to read the final offer soon. The next book I read was one of my most anticipated books of the year, and that was Grimm and Barrett by Juliet Cross. This was the last book in the Stay a Spell series. It came out in May, and this was Clara and Henry? Oh my gosh, I don't know how I blanked on his name. Clara and Henry's story. And oh my gosh, this is the couple that I've been like dying for since like book 2. And I think the author really nailed it. I loved every single page of this story. I will say the one thing I'll say is that you do, I think, really need to have read the first, I think this is what, book 6? Or 7, you really do need to have read the series in order. And I'm not normally one to say that, or at least read the first few before this, because Henry and Clara, they kind of have had this building tension and building relationship throughout the rest of the series. So when it got to this one, it wasn't like a whole bunch of pining. It kind of happened pretty quickly, but it made sense to do it that way because the audience, us readers, have been like pining after these characters to be together forever. And so I loved it. I think Clara just knew what she wanted, and I really liked that she kind of took charge, and she's like, you know what? Henry is not going to make a move, so I'm gonna have to do something about this. He is my destiny and I'm gonna make it happen. And I think, you know, I liked the idea of kind of looking a little deeper at Clara. A lot of people see her as like the nice girl or the friendly one or the sweet one. And that's not all there is to her, and there's a lot more, and that sometimes when people say those things about you, while it's nice, it can be a little restraining. And I like that Henry never really put that label on her, and he really saw who she was. Henry was the sweetest, like marshmallow of a man. I loved him so much. Like, he was perfect, but he also was perfect in the fact that like he wasn't always super sweet. He could definitely turn up the steam. He knew what he was doing. And I loved it. I thought it was so good. The epilogue in this book made me sob, like literally sob. I just felt so attached to this series and these characters, and watching Henry and Clara find their happily ever after was just perfect. The whole grim side of things, getting to know even more about that and those like kind of paranormal creature was really cool. I will say there wasn't like a massive like thing at the end of this series. It definitely reads as kind of a standalone, but then the epilogue kind of wraps everyone's story up and you get to see all your favorite couples and characters and the sisters at the end. But it wasn't like a big like ta-da. It was just, it really was like a very comforting ending, but it wasn't like necessarily fireworks, and that was fine with me. I loved it. So if you haven't read the series, please go read it. I recommend the series all the time. Please do read the first one, Wolf Gone Wild. It's become kind of like a comfort series. I know a lot of people are saying that, and it's just true. I feel like when you want a book that you know you're gonna love, you just want to escape into something that's very cozy and comforting, this is a great one to read. Okay, in the last book, I'm going to talk about my last 5-star, which I don't know what's my favorite of the month. I'm kind of torn between Grimm and Barrett and this book, which is Heartless by Elsie Silver. I'm torn between which one was my favorite. I feel like they're kind of tied, but this was great. So this is book 2 in the, I can't remember the name of the series, but you guys know what I'm talking about. It's her newest series, and I finally read this one, and this one was a 5-star. I gave the first book 4 stars, and I definitely did really like it, but this one, everyone was right. Everyone kept telling me this was going to be my favorite. I will say I was a little bit nervous going in because like my best friend loves Elsie Silver. She's read, I think, all of her books, or at least close to it, and she kept telling me that I was going to love this one, but it kind of made me a little nervous because I started reading it, and again, it took me a minute to kind of warm up to Cade, and I was like, oh God, am I not gonna like this book? Which is fine, but it's like, you know, I wanted to like it, but I did. So in this book you have Cade, and he's a single dad, and he needs a nanny for his son, and then you have Willa, who's this kind of like free spirit, doesn't quite know where she belongs, but is just like making the most out of her life, and she becomes the nanny for his son. The relationship between Willa and Cade's son was just the sweetest thing. Like, she says she fell in love with him first, and she definitely did. It was just so beautiful to watch. And then Cade, like, whoo, like, he did not hold back. And there were times where I literally was like, did that just come out of his mouth? Because especially when you look at like his like kind of buttoned up, like not really buttoned up, but like rough kind of exterior, especially towards the beginning of the book, and then where he was at the end, I was just like, wow, that was great. And what I really did like is that, you know, Willa really brought Cade out of his kind of shell that he'd kind of closed himself up in, and was really making him see life again and live life again, like in a joyful way. And I think on the flip side, I really think Cade really kind of anchored and rooted Willa and kind of showed her a home, and how you don't have to be doing anything crazy. You can be really happy just in your home that you find with the people that you love, and really helped her find her place in a way that I think was just really well done. I think these two were just so well matched. So definitely one of my favorites of the month, and I'm really excited to read Powerless next. All right, guys, so those were all the books I read in May. Let me know what your favorite was, or if you've read any of these, I'd love to know. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye.